it's hard to miss, isn't it?
Mm.
Seems like every big company now is, showing off their latest tree planting thing.
Yeah, everywhere. Clothing brands, tech companies, they're all suddenly about planting trees.
But with so much green noise, you kind of have to wonder, right? Are these efforts actually about helping the environment?
Well, it's fascinating the sheer number of these campaigns popping up, especially now with all the climate warnings getting louder. It makes you ask, are we seeing real action or is it
Uh,
something else?
Okay, yeah, let's dig into this because the stuff we looked at for you, articles from all four trees, and towards sustainability, they suggest we need to look, well, deeper than the headlines. They bring up this idea of tree washing,
Mm,
kind of like greenwashing, but, specifically using the nice image of planting trees.
exactly. And towards sustainability points out that greenwashing itself, making a company look eco-friendly without really doing the hard work that's been around a while, tree washing is just a specific, very visual version of that.
Right. And all four trees puts it pretty bluntly, doesn't it? They call hashtag tree washing just greenwashing by planting trees.
Yeah.
They say these claims from companies, sometimes even the planting platforms themselves, they muddy the waters about what real forest preservation looks like. It can actually get in the way of stuff that works better.
Billions are apparently going into these very visible schemes, but often it's just a tiny fraction of what would actually be needed to balance out the company's real carbon impact.
So the main idea, from both sources really, is that promoting the tree planting can sort of act like a smokescreen.
Uh-huh. It pulls attention away from the bigger environmental problems, especially carbon emissions. We've even seen projects fail because they didn't think about biodiversity or, who takes care of the trees long term.
It makes you wonder, though, why trees? Why has planting trees become this, like, universal symbol for companies going green?
Towards Sustainability has some thoughts on that. They talk about how visible it is. It's easy to take pictures of saplings, right? New little forests. Makes for great PR.
Tangible stuff you could show off.
Exactly. And that gets you recognition, good press, locally, globally. Plus, there's that emotional connection people have. Planting trees just feels like fighting climate change.
Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah.
But is there a risk there? Like,
Yeah.
focusing just on the nice pictures means we ignore the less pretty solutions. Things like, I don't know, investing in renewables.
That's a really important point. It ticks the feel-good boxes, absolutely. But it might distract, like you said, from where the really heavy lifting needs to happen.
And this is where it gets, well, really interesting. Because both sources talk about the downsides, the negative consequences of this tree washing.
Hmm.
Towards sustainability says it helps companies dodge accountability. If everyone sees them planting trees, maybe people, maybe even regulators don't look so closely at their actual carbon footprint.
Precisely. And focusing only on trees can actually weaken other, maybe more important, sustainability efforts.
Huh.
Well, companies might skip the harder stuff, cutting emissions, using fewer resources, changing how they make things if they think, oh, we planted trees, we're good.
Right. And we don't always know what's really happening with these projects either.
Yeah. Towards Sustainability mentions a real lack of transparency quite often. You get vague details, what kind of trees, where exactly, who makes sure they actually survive.
That information gap.
And all four trees adds that this tree washing spreads, well, misinformation. It kind of oversimplifies the whole issue of forest preservation and restoration.
So it could actually pull resources away from better strategies.
Potentially, yeah. They even say trees are becoming a sort of cheap green guarantee for companies that don't want to make the bigger systemic changes they really need to.
Okay, so knowing all this, how can we get better at spotting these tactics? How do we know if it's tree washing?
Towards Sustainability gives some useful red flags. One big one is just vague claims. Like if they don't give specifics. What tree species? Where? What are the long-term goals for survival in the ecosystem? If that's missing, be a bit skeptical.
Okay, what else?
Another thing is putting too much emphasis on the trees. If all their environmental talk is about planting trees and they don't mention anything else, reducing emissions, managing waste, sustainable sourcing,
Then it's maybe a bit unbalanced.
it might be, yeah, worth looking closer. And then there's the lack of verification. Is anyone independent checking their claims? Are there any credible certifications?
Right, third-party proof.
Exactly. Without that, it's hard to trust the numbers they throw around. And all four trees has practical guides on their site too, like how to avoid hashtag tree washing and the risks involved. So there are resources out there.
That's helpful. So what does the opposite look like? What do genuinely committed companies do?
Well, Towards sustainability says the really responsible companies take a holistic approach.
Hmm.
They work on emissions, resource use, sourcing, and if they do tree planting, it's part of that bigger picture, not the whole story.
Makes sense. Integrated, not isolated.
And transparency is huge. They report openly, they provide details, they often get those third-party certifications we mentioned to back up their claims.
So it's about the whole picture, not just the leafy green part.
Pretty much. And just for context, all four trees actually started using the hashtag treewashing term back in 2019. They wanted to raise awareness specifically about this kind of greenwashing.
So they've been working on this for a while.
Yeah, they have a working group focused on carbon offsetting and reforestation, trying to educate people and companies. They've even pointed to research questioning if just planting, trillions of trees is the magic bullet for climate change anyway.
Which tells you it's way more complex than some of these campaigns make it sound.
Definitely. So if we boil it all down, the key takeaway is tree washing is really a marketing move.
Hmm,
It uses the good vibes around tree planting to paint a positive picture, but often it's hiding a lack of real deep commitment to sustainability.
exactly. It's a good reminder for all of us, to look past the easy, feel-good actions. We need to ask for transparency and look for that comprehensive approach from companies we support.
Which brings us to a question for you, the listener. When you see these environmental claims, think about it. Is the focus mostly on the easy-to-see stuff, like planting trees?
Or are they also talking about the tougher, maybe less glamorous, but really crucial stuff, like their core impact?
What questions should you be asking to figure out if it's a genuine commitment or just a green show?
Something to think about next time you see one of those "we planted a million trees"
Hmm.
announcements. And if you want to learn more, definitely check out the resources we talked about, all four trees, and just look into greenwashing more broadly. Being an informed consumer here is, well, it's more important than ever.